Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Krubali. Yesterday, I did a live feed, and I spoke about a couple of issues about this whole tribalism thing. And today, I wanted to take a different spin. But let me give you a little background. When this entire struggle was going on, I had family friends, including my own mother, that told me to stay away from it. But because I so passionately believe that what I was doing was the right thing, I didn't listen. I kept fighting. And once Yahya Jammeh was voted out of office, the first conversation I had with my mom was, enough. You've done your part. It is time to move on with your life and take care of your family. And I promised just to do that. And that's why after a while I was very quiet. But I don't know what it is. There's something in me that is so passionate about Gambia. There's something in me, maybe I took so much political DNA from my dad. Maybe I can't help myself. And I have learned to accept the fact that I will continue to speak about national issues. And one thing I have promised myself is that whilst I do it, I will stay very clean, and I will do my best to have a professional discussion, a candid one, and to be fair. And today what I wanted to do is just do a little spin, talk about the diaspora, the whole coalition saga that's happening. Because I think the diaspora is very unhappy right now. Now you ask who is the diaspora. The diaspora is just any Gambian outside, a group of us. Many are very, very unhappy at the moment. Given that, just looking at the feedback on Facebook and social media. Now, one thing I must say, the coalition or any political party that tries to distance themselves or bring a wedge between them and the diaspora is making the biggest mistake. Because the diaspora is a very strong constituency of the Gambian population. And I think we've learned that. The political parties on the ground have learned that. They've learned what the diaspora could do. And I'm the first to start blaming the diaspora and saying we need to give these people an opportunity. Now, let me talk about things that many will not be talking about or are not comfortable talking about. And that is all these differences that happened during this coalition. First of all, the coalition is normal. We know that we cannot fool ourselves. They're breaking apart. GMC, UDP, NRP on one side. PVP out there, PDOI is out there. That is a fact. That is the first registered disappointment that I expressed in the fact that after 22 years of dictatorship, Gambians came together after all the abuse that happened to our people, that we came together and forged the relationship. Now, our relationship was not constitutional, but there is what you call a gentleman's agreement. Because in Africa, I think that's what weighs more. We live in villages and towns. We don't have a lot of wealth. A person has your voice and your reputation. When we got into this agreement to go and fight Yahya, as a group, we went and defeated Yahya. Clean fight. Everybody contributed. We thought for once we have what it takes. And we entrusted our nation to a few people. When we did that, they break apart. We were not very happy about it. And I think that's where the problems began. Let me tell you what my take is on this breakup, this whole breakup issue. I will talk about Khalifa. I'll talk about how UDP and Ousseynou. Let me begin with Khalifa and PDOIs. I thought Khalifa does have the right to say no to any position. But there's also something that tells me that if we get into an agreement and we go to find something, that you should at least, if we get that and we divide it, you should at least be a part of it. You should accept something. It's just like in Gambia when people come and give you something, even if you're not poor, you don't turn it away. It's a courtesy. If Khalifa was not interested in any position, Khalifa could have hired a couple of qualified people in the country and say, since this is what you guys want me to do, I don't want the positions, I can give it to someone else. I can give it to X, Y, and Z. Or I recommend X, Y, and Z. Maybe give is the wrong word. When he refused to do that, automatically there was suspicion that what's going on? Why all of a sudden? Now, this was given that there was some major differences between these groups when there was all the communication happening during the impasse, which Jaya did based on, previous experience of how to divide the Gambian people. Whilst he was being kicked out, he made sure that he created some kind of a rift, and his people were giving us false information. I think that's where the suspicion really began. When that happened, and if I were in the same situation, I would question why. And that is where I hold Khalifa responsible. Although Khalifa does have a right to say he does not want anything. But he also, given that he was part of this and possibly the architect of the coalition, he should have at least accepted a position or recommended people to a position. I don't know if this has happened, but at least he didn't tell us that. When he did that, UDP was suspicious. They're wondering why, what happened. And once the suspicion began, the trust was gone. I have had this conversation with a lot of people, some of you UDP people. And what I've told them is, if you're the big one and you're fighting with the small one, you gotta be careful how you throw your punches. Because sometimes your punches can do more damage. I thought the UDP could have also been a little bit more sensitive and maybe go into this and say, you know what? You don't want to be a minister. Great. What do you want? You want a member of parliament? Let's see what we can do about that. And I think that would have really bridged the gap. And this whole coalition thing, depending on who you talk to, should we have gone independent? Should we have gone party route? I think UDP had made one mistake when they plainly came out and said they don't want to do the alliance route or the independent route based on they don't want their political party to die. Now, I am going with what I hear on social media. I thought that was a little dangerous to say, and I did express that. Now, we know every single member of this group, every single one of them had their own personal interest, and they didn't want their political parties to die. And this is why it is very important what we say out there. This is why it is very important that sometimes we look at national interest, that we don't fan the flames, or we don't say things that could possibly ruin our whole relationship. In my take, I think this is the two things that possibly could have done right. Should the coalition have continued a coalition with a 3-year agenda? Yes. Because in as much as it violates the Constitution, there is what you call a gentleman's agreement. Because when we were agreeing on that memorandum of understanding, there were adults that knew what the Constitution read. But the agreement was they were going to get together, change the bad constitution that they had in the country, and call for fresh elections. Now, I don't know what happened. I don't know what's going to happen if the borough government is going to honor that, or if they're not going to honor that. And I'm being very factual because I'm a true believer that other than God, my destiny belongs in my hand. And I will do the best thing and say the right thing. If that means breaking relationship with people, I will do it. Because the right thing is the right thing. I think these coalition members, we in the diaspora, we young Gambians, need to be very careful of not allowing our political leaders to use us to fight for them. Because what we have seen is that Yahya used a lot of Gambians to kill for him, to fight for him, and do all the nasty things for him. But when it was all said and done, he was placed on a flight with his family and his belongings, and he left them behind. If that is not a lesson to the Gambian, I don't know what else is. And one thing I have noticed, Gambian youths, we cannot allow any criticism of our leaders. That is, it goes to both sides. You talk something about PDOIs, you're going to hear the PDOIs people come after you. You say something about PPP, they're going to come after you. Everybody is holding these leaders. In as much as we want to say that they are our servants, we're all biased when it comes to these leaders. So we need to take a look at ourselves and say, are we being objective to our leaders in private like we are objective to them in public? Are we fair to them? Are we telling them what they're doing wrong? Are these leaders taking their leadership responsibility? Because all they have to say is, enough. All the UDP or PDOIs have to say is to come on the media and say, unless you hear from our own PR, nobody is speaking for a party. But we have people very passionate about their political parties. People very passionate, and they will go to any extent. And this is why I believe so much that because of this political impasse that we're going through, we should not read into it beyond what it is. What is happening in our country is a simple power struggle after a dictatorship. This is what dictators do. When they come into power, they use the people. They divide us because that is the only way they're able to stay in power. And when they leave, the effect still stays. And that is why today you're seeing sensible Gambians, people educated, fanning the flames of tribalism. After we've lived together for centuries, actually decades, with no problems. After we treat each other, we go to each other's naming ceremony, we bury each other, we live together. Everywhere you go in the diaspora, you look at the community that we live in, we are so diverse in there. But we still believe that there is tribalism to the extent that it needs to be addressed. Now, do we have a couple of idiots out there running around trying to fan the flames of tribalism? Yes. There's people there out there that are going to do anything. They just don't want society to work. That is where we have these terrorists. They're so bitter. They don't see tomorrow. They don't see beyond this year. They don't see beyond next year. So they want to disrupt life. That is what we have. When people are not successful, when people don't have jobs, when people don't have better things to do, they want to disrupt the peace and tranquility of a nation. And that is why we have terrorists trying to disrupt the common people by bombing, creating all kinds of division within us. And this is why I think it is very important for us Gambians, especially the young ones that are sensible enough, to know that tribalism is not a problem to the point where we can stay 2-3 hours addressing it. We must be sensible to understand that a recording from 5-10 people does not warrant, or it's not enough evidence to say there's tribalism. Playing a couple of recordings from ignorant people does not warrant to bring division within a Gambian people, within households that have lived together for centuries and decades. Ladies and gentlemen, we can all argue what we want to do, and I think the diaspora does that very well. We do a very good job arguing. We can debate very well. Some of us were trained to debate at Armitage High School, and you didn't have to believe it. They gave you a subject, and you researched it, and you came and you debated on Saturday nights. They were not fun nights because we wanted musical nights more than debate nights. And this is why I say you can debate any point. Anybody can come here and give us evidence here, there. But it's not enough. There has to be a consistency. There has to be enough evidence to show that there is tribalism in our country. But what I think needs to be done at this point, I think the leaders, those coalition leaders, need to take a step back. They need to reconnect with the diaspora. Because the diaspora is angry. That is it's a fact. Why is the diaspora angry? And I'll tell you why. I have heard some people say that the people they used to speak to and the government did not reach out to the diaspora. That is a fact. And I'm a true believer to say it, just to stand and say that we value you is one thing. It's another thing when you genuinely show. Now, I don't know what the plans of the government is. But I think they should have really given diaspora a little bit more attention, not in positions, but in the fact that there's some people in the diaspora, the media houses. I thought a personal phone call from a member of the coalition to these diaspora, to these media houses that took their money, their resources, and gave us the platforms to raise funds, I think those people should have been called and at least be thanked. I think the government could have done that, just like GDF had tried to do certificates to thank people. Just like GDF would have done, and we always did, to always thank the people. I think the coalition could have done that. But I understand why things didn't work according to the way they planned it. Because Yahya messed it all up for us. And this is where I said we need to understand what was handed to these people. It was chaotic from the get-go. It has been chaotic for 21 years. And Yahya made sure that nothing goes smooth. And this is where we, the diaspora, we, the educated ones, need to come to our senses and really understand that the dangers far outweigh the positives we're trying to do. By fanning the flames of tribalism, always attacking each other, it is giving the enemy breathing room. It is giving the wicked enemy space. It is taking the rights of the victims away. It is making it harder to bring people to justice. This is why I think we should have a civilized conversation. There's nothing wrong with having a debate. Just like I said, racism does exist in America. And I'll tell you a little bit about racism in America, because I worked in HR. HR is my major. There's a saying when people come to file discrimination, it has to pass the test. But also, racism is the last card that any minority in the United States has before you put it on the table. And before you put it on the table, you've got to make sure you got your facts right. You've got to make sure there's consistency, and you've got to make sure that there's evidence. Because it is a terminable offense. When people are found to be racist or discriminating people, they terminate them on the spot after investigation. Before we cry any type of tribalism, there must be a consistent violation of people's rights based on tribal lines. Has this happened? No. Have we had people doing recordings to talk about bad things about other tribes? Yes. In every society you go, you will find people that don't have anything better to do. And this is why I say our problem is more of an economic problem. The government's got their work cut out for them. Many of us are very quiet and we're very patient because we want to give them the opportunity to succeed. When you hire an individual at a job, you train them. When you train them, you give them an opportunity which is a probationary period. In this case, there's no training. President Barrow himself have told us that he does not have any government experience. Now, I don't know if any of them know how to govern, and that is why they break apart didn't help, because each of those individuals had something unique, had a special talent, and that's why it was so important for them to stay together. That is why it was so important for them to continue to rely on each other. And that is where I was more disappointed. Because I'm the kind of guy, even if I have a difference with you, I will not engage in back and forth. I will tell you how I feel. I'll keep it professional. But when we started seeing grown adults, Gambians that were supposed to protect the Gambian people, going at it, I hope it's just politics at this time. I hope after April 6th and come May that we'll be seeing a totally different government. That we will see some results. That we will see them protecting our rights. That we will understand that this was also a transitional period of differences. But a lot of mistakes have been happening. This is my take on things. This is my take on things. And people can say anything they want. Everybody does have their own take. In my take, this is the problem. The leaders need to take their leadership position and start denouncing the people that are making their political parties look bad. And those of us, the young people, need to be responsible. When you come to a fight, or when you witness a fight, or when you're called to talk in between two people, we do it all the time in our communities. We don't just come and say, you're wrong, you're right. In most cases, we know who is wrong. But even if we say, we don't say it in public. We try to fix it. Be critical of your government. Be critical of your friend. Be critical of your neighbor. But don't make it look like you're going after them. Nobody cares about Barrow individually. Barrow came into this because he is the president of the nation. And just like Yahya was given the opportunity until he disappointed the Gambian people, this government also needs that opportunity. And the government will make a big mistake if they think that the diaspora is not important. Because what I have seen the last few days, if I were a political leader, I'll be very scared, or if I were a member of the UDP, I'll be very scared. Not because they can beat you, it's because you don't want public, negative energy. You don't want people sitting to destroy, because if they keep doing it, it is going to stick. And this is why the other day on Ahmad Jida's program, I mentioned that UDP has to get their act together. They need to make sure that they have a PR. They need to be an organized political party, because it is going to help a lot. Because some of the people that are doing these recordings are not helping us. It is a very, very weird situation. You look at the average Gambian, your average friend within your own circle or your own neighborhood. When you look at them, you see all different types of tribes. And when this conversation becomes a daily topic, it creates that suspicion within us. It makes you start thinking along tribal lines. That is the danger and the fear that we should avoid. This is why it's very important. We're going to have our personal differences. We're not going to agree on things, and we're going to passionately believe that we're right as individuals. But this is what I've done since during the campaign time. I always try to say, let's keep it professional. Let's be clean. We're not going to always agree. There's going to come a time we're going to have to move away from one another to get that breathing space and get our cool back. But we cannot, as a nation, look at 5 instances or even 100 instances out of 2 million and call it a problem. No Gambian can show me a record of continuous evidence or just any type of systematic record to show that people are being discriminated in the Gambia based on tribal lines. It's not there. It doesn't exist. I am Gambian like you. I lived in the Gambia like you, and I associate with Gambians every day. What is happening is the effects of dictatorship. It's the lack of trust that's been there. And that is why, as soon as this change happened, everybody started positioning themselves for either a possible job or possibly trying to go back to their camps. I think we did it a little bit too early. I think the coalition should have stayed, because it would have driven away all these problems that is happening right now. But because of that, we're reading into each and every move that they do. Now, some of the moves that happen, I can also easily speculate of what it is. But I like to think that it is inexperience. I like to think that after 22 years of abuse from a small group of people, after our sisters have been raped, our brothers killed, tortured. Just yesterday we heard what Duga was doing in the Gambia, talking to some of these victims. If that is not enough for a young citizen to say, you know what? It is time we focus on more of the positive things. It is time we try to look at more positive things. It is time we try to bridge that gap, because we don't want this to happen again. We don't want anyone else raped in that country. We don't want anyone else arrested in the middle of the night in that country. That is what our focus should be. Be critical of your government. This is the same thing I said when people were spending 5-10 hours talking about GDF. And I keep bringing that up because it is a good example when people were being accused of stealing money, embezzling money, where people were being accused of doing all kinds of things. But once it succeeded, everybody kept quiet. We all celebrated. GDF had made mistakes that I will admit, some serious mistakes. But I debated and I stuck my neck out because I knew it was a group of people that had the right intentions, that had a vision of what they were trying to do. Excuse me about that. And that is why I was willing to go to any extent to defend that group. We must not make the same mistakes again, because this time around, it's not a small group of people. This time around, it's not about money. This time around, what we're doing is we're giving the dictatorship breathing room to come back. Yahya Jammeh and his people should have been busy in the courts defending themselves rather than campaigning. They should have been busy in court defending themselves rather than campaigning for a political position in that country after 22 years of dictatorship. When we have raw evidence walking in that country, that is why, to me, it is very embarrassing. And it's not about holding your government accountable. And you can say, if it is, then as a young man, maybe we should be a little bit more positive. And I know it's progress. Yes, I'm not the most positive. I'm not perfect. But I fear for the past to return, that I want to give the present an opportunity. And before I criticize them very hard, right now, like I said, I just told you, they cannot ignore the diaspora that helped put them there. And yes, the diaspora did matter because the diaspora was the stubborn one in this case. We were the ones that continuously talked, even when the leaders told us to be quiet, even when they told us to take a different approach. People woke up every day, 7 days a week, to talk about the bad things that are happening in the country, to the point where it became a trend, to the point where people believed us, to the point where evidence was coming out. Nothing has to happen yet. Some things that have happened, I honestly think it is a mistake and inexperienced move. Their differences, going after each other, it is untasteful. And I wish I would never do that, because I would rather walk away from a deal than go there and say, this is what we talked about. There's a saying that don't kiss and tell. These political parties had an agreement. We trusted them. Gambians invested into them. Each and every one of them have a responsibility to hold to that agreement that they sold us. We didn't force them. Nobody was forced. It was an agreement. It was something against the Constitution. Find a way to correct the Constitution without breaking that agreement, whatever that means. But if that agreement is broken, if down the road the Gambian people see that the people they entrusted with the powers are failing them, there's going to be alternatives. This is not a threat, because as we speak, this early, there's Gambians even talking about coming up with political parties because they're not happy with what they're seeing when senior members of our political parties are going at each other. Some of us are caught in between with the fear that Yahya has been given breathing room, with the fear that we can even have today a political party that abused us for 22 years to be in our parliament, to talk about the laws. That should be something that we fight against. That should have been our focus, to make sure that there is no sign of APRC. APRC does have a right to participate in Gambian politics, just like anyone else. But anybody that was responsible or part of a department or a division of anything that was involved in any kind of abuse should not have been allowed to run for office. That could have been done tactically, in the sense that they should have been taken to court. But as we engage this government in accusing them, confusing them, that's what we did to Yahya. We attacked him on both sides, everywhere. He took us for granted. And next thing you know, he was engulfed. He got beat. To this day, I'm sure he's waking up thinking, what mistakes did I make? Some of the mistakes he made was when he openly pronounced his hatred for a group of people, a tribe. The entire country got up and they fought him. That's when I started hearing people that will not talk about politics. People saying, oh my God, he's really pushed it too far. And I think that's where we're headed. Now, you can even say that, yes, and I did post it, I said, even in the US, there's racism, but it doesn't preoccupy them. I mean that. Everywhere you go, it's there. You can see it in the grocery stores. You can see it anywhere. But you deal with it there and you move away. You don't preoccupy yourself into that constantly. If you do it, it's gonna mess up your brain. It is going to distract you. If you focus on the negative too much, there's a saying that you cannot change negative people. What you do is you walk away from them. If you try to change a negative person, they will turn you into being negative. And this is where it's very worrisome. When you have young Gambians that are supposed to sit with a plan, young Gambians that are saying they're educated, let's talk about it, folks. But when it matters, let's talk about it when it matters. Let's talk about it when we see homes being burned, only Mandinka homes being burned, or only Jolas getting killed. Yes, we don't have to wait until 200 of them are killed. But everywhere you go, you have to have some kind of evidence, some kind of a track record. It is not there. Is it worth talking about? Yes, it is worth talking about. Are the people that are doing it, do we need to condemn them? Yes. But we cannot use a few recordings to make us believe. Today I heard people saying, oh my God, this is really scary. Minorities that are wondering what's going to happen to me, because we've all seen what happened to other nations. Supposedly, in Rwanda, what happened there was started by a radio station. That's what I heard. So that one voice that can keep pushing the envelope, it's funny now. It is very funny right now. It is entertaining. But it is the most destructive thing you can do. Before it destroys the Gambia, it's going to destroy our own families. Tribalism, if we fan it, it's not only going to destroy the Gambia, but it's going to destroy us first. And then we're going to wonder what happened. And this is why it is very important for us to come out. Now, if down the road, there's evidence that there's tribalism, I'll be forced to come and say, you know what, maybe you were right. But it's not. Because I look at my community, I look at the people I talk with, and I look at those recordings, I hear those recordings, and I know it's just a few ignorant people going at it. Some think it's a game. It's a political ping pong. But it's not. I am tired of being oppressed. I am tired of living in a situation where you cannot even breathe. I'm tired of going home knowing that I cannot get good health care over there. Good education. I'm tired of even going into the country knowing that somebody can even touch me. Not because I'm scared of being beaten, because it's a violation. That is what I hated mostly about the dictatorship. When they grabbed you as an individual and 4 of them attack you. The biggest disrespect a human being can do is to lay hands on another human being. We can throw the words out and hurt each other. But when you lay hands on your fellow human being, that is the lowest form of disrespect. It doesn't get lower than that. And that is why I personally hated them. So let's continue the route that we're on. It's a game now. It's arguable. We can debate all day, all night, and we will never come to an agreement. Or we can also be sensible citizens, responsible citizens that say, you know what? I don't want to engage in this. Yeah, that recording was nasty. Yeah, that's scary. But there's more good to the Gambia. There's more good things. Our culture, the good people, all the people that are going, they say they don't even know. The African Gambian is more worried about putting food on the table. It's more worried about the bag of rice coming down, the bag of cement, so that they can get a good home to get into. The average Gambian wants security. Those people that were raped, killed, or beaten, they fear that the dictator could come back again, or somebody else might. They fear that if we continue on this ride, another junior soldier might try to do an overthrow once the economic soldiers leave. That is the danger we face. And this is why it is very important for us to understand that we have options. 2, 1, we can continue to be negative and call it challenging your government. Or 2, we can look at the good and challenge them in a form to say, what is this? So far, the formation is still in place. You can against anybody you want. But the one thing that this government have done that I really like is the fact that today Gambians can go into the Gambia and they will not be arrested illegally. They have protected the right. And for me, that's a good start. We're going to heal as a nation. The Gambia is still young, but only some of us that are educated, only some of us that have the platforms to push the positive. People are wanting to go home to do good things. But that's not going to happen if we continue on fanning these flames. So we need to be very careful. We need to be very careful. And I challenge the conversation to happen. Like I said, I've been told, stay away from it by my family. I just cannot help it. When I see it, I say it. Come, but let's have a civil conversation. Let's not scare each other. Let's not destroy each other's homes. Let's not make a non-issue an issue. Because if we talk about it long enough, we're going to scare people, and people are going to start looking at each other suspiciously. And this is what is really, really, really important. What matters, ladies and gentlemen, is the Gambia. If we all look at the Gambia to make sure the Gambia doesn't fail, if we all look at the Gambia to make sure that the Gambia becomes a good country, if we all look at Gambia to say we want the Gambia to be a place where other nationals can also come in and live peacefully, where we can return home and be something in our own country, then we must focus on more of the positives. And when we do constructive criticism, there's an 80-20% rule that when you criticize, you also have to compliment for you to be heard. I am going to be very, 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 very supportive of this government. But I'll be the first to come out if they don't perform in 6 months to a year. But this is 3 months. Parliamentary elections is happening. A lot of things are moving. Disappointments have happened. But the leaders must understand every relationship can be mended. Every relationship can be mended. These people have worked together long enough. They know each other long enough. They are the senior members of our community today. And those of us that are waiting in line, that are the future leaders of tomorrow, the younger generation, must look at the mistakes that they did and make sure we don't make those mistakes. Must look at the fact that they didn't agree after they shook hands. To me, a handshake is more important. I've had a lot of relationships with people. Most of them is not based on contract. Most of them is based on a past experience. Some of those relationships are there. Some of them are no longer. But one thing will remain, that there is the respect. And I will close by saying one thing that I always tell to my employees. I always advise my employees to treat each other right. And I tell them this. If we were to meet at a big old park, where there's a huge function, if you see me and my family, and I didn't see you, would you come and say hello to me? If you say yes, that means we've treated each other well. That means I have at least kept a cordial relationship. If you say no, then we need to work on our relationship, because that's what people do. Let's talk about the negatives, but let's be careful of what we're doing. The Gambia is the most important thing. If we don't nurture this new democracy, if we don't nurture this new Gambia, we might regret it. That's what we did with PPP. Now we appreciated them after we went through the abuse of PDOIS. We're here again. Now we have the option of bettering this, or the option of just saying, you know what, I'm going to walk away from it. Ladies and gentlemen, that was my take on these things, and I will continue to talk about this. Like I said, I can't help it. Let's all do our part. But we're adults. We're fathers. We will not want our own homes to break. Part of being a man is to make sure that your household is taken care of. There's those days that things are not okay. But you look at the past. Are we going to manage the Gambia as our own in protecting it and making sure that we take care of the problems? That if there's a problem, we try and work it out. Or are we going to just say, we don't care, we're just going to say anything that we want? The choice is ours. I hope dictatorship never returns in that country. Some of us are old enough, if it happens, many of us will not live another 50 years. But we have grandkids. We have sons and daughters, some of whom have never been home because of the dictatorship. Do we really want to chance it? Do we really want to give these people an opportunity? Do we really even want to take a chance? If anybody had told you that during the Jawara era that, hey, we can have dictatorship in this country where people will be killed, raped for 22 years, you would have said no. So don't sell me that idea that it is not possible again. It is only possible because the next person that comes is going to say, you know what? We've tried Yaya, he succeeded for 22 years. We tried Barrow, he didn't succeed. So Yaya's route is the way to stay in government. And that's the fear. I hope I'm wrong. Thank you so much. God bless all of you guys, and have a wonderful weekend.